You lost me there. I don't know what that has to do with north and south and coastal cities, and I'm not sure exactly what your meaning was there. I'm asking you to clarify your answer. Make it more explicit. Anybody want to help her out? Go.
Goods from the Northwest, the newer Northwest states, they didn't have to be shipped down through the Mississippi River and out to New Orleans. They could go to Europe.
It links the Midwest to the Northeast. It links the Midwestern farmer to northeastern cities that can ship those goods out. No longer do the farmers in the upper Midwest need to rely on getting their stuff down the Mississippi River, although they still did. But the Erie Canal is going to transform that relationship, and it's going to link the Midwest to the Northeast. What other transportation innovations and revolutions do we see at this time? What kind of transformation? Yeah.
Railroads.
The railroads. We talked about canals. We talked about steamboats and the advantages of canals that you could carry large quantities of supplies between east and west. But in the 1830s, you get the construction and expansion of railroads. Now, railroads were not invented in the United States. They were invented in Europe. But the first railroad is built in the United States in 1831. Where is it built? It's actually the first major railroad company is the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company, but it's built in Ellicott City. If you go up to Ellicott City today, they've got the Railroad Museum and all that to celebrate the first railroad built in the United States that linked Ellicott City to Baltimore. Okay? So, the first railroads, I mean, you look at these engines and you say to yourself, well, my God, it's a boiler on wheels. What could it possibly do? And indeed, like any new technology, it's going to take a while to get off the ground. I mean, the internet, when was the internet invented?
1989.
Huh?
1989.
Nope. 1969. Yes, the internet was invented in 1969. Yet it didn't find a practical, efficient application until the late 80s, early 1990s. So it takes a while for new technologies to be fully incorporated into the mainstream of America, and the same thing is true with railroads. Railroads come to America in 1831. Here's the railroads by 1850. Railroads in the United States by 1850. What do you notice? Okay, I gotta have hands up. I cannot have mumbling and that. Yeah.
Port cities.
What about them?
That's usually where they're located to transport goods for exports.
Okay, all right. Yeah, what else do you notice? I mean, look at these railroads here. I mean, look at this one. I mean, where in the world does it go? I have no idea. Look at that one. Where in the world does that one go? I have no idea. What is it that you notice about a lot of these railroads? Go. They're not connected. They're what are called trunk lines or short lines if you play Monopoly. A short line. Now, guys, can you imagine if you were on the internet and you could only go from this website to that website to maybe one other website, and that was it? And if you wanted to go to other websites, you'd have to go to another program? Can you imagine that if those programs on the internet didn't talk to one another? That's the problem you're seeing here. These railroads don't talk to one another. Why? Why might they be different? Why might they not be connected? Yeah.
they're built by separate companies?
They are built by separate companies, and each company has got its own railroad engines, it's got its own cars, and it makes the railroad in its own way. So, yeah.
But aren't there like different like subway stations too? There's like the Metro line and then there's like another one.
Mark line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And can MARC trains travel on the Metro line? They can.
Oh.
Want to know why?
Federal regulation.
Federal regulation. That is exactly it. The way you get these railroads to talk to one another is by mandating a standard for the construction of railroads. A federal standard. Every railroad has to have a gauge this wide so that the railroads talk to one another. So you can switch from this line to that line. Once the federal government steps in and mandates that, you go from this in 1850 to this in 1860. So the federal government coming in and standardizing railroads is going to lead to an expansion of the railroads. What does that mean for society, for the economy, for the country as a whole, for immigrants?
Faster transportation anywhere.
You can get anywhere in the country very fast. What else does it mean? Yeah.
You can get your agricultural crops to cities.
Efficiency in transportation of agricultural goods, good for farmers.
Westward movement.
Westward movement, good for people in the east who are looking to escape all the hubbub in the east, that safety valve to move west. Yes, the country is bound together, and notice where the country is bound together.
The north.
In the north. Exactly. Yeah. What else?
Information travels faster.
Information travels faster because the other revolution at this time is the information revolution, and that's the invention of the telegraph in 1837. And where are they going to build those telegraph wires? Right along the railroad lines. So there's your information superhighway, your trading superhighway, your people mover superhighway, and guys, these railroads don't just miracle themselves into existence. Somebody's got to build them. It creates jobs. Somebody's got to build them, and who's going to build them?
Immigrants.
The cheapest labor possible, the immigrants. There you go. In the East, mainly built by the Irish. In the West, when California comes into the Union, mainly built by Chinese labor. But American companies are going to hire the cheapest labor possible. All right. Let's see here. Communication. We talked about the telegraph. That is something that we need to know because that leads to the spread of information. Okay? So the telegraph was invented in 1837. That's a big deal. So what does it mean? It means that the country is now connected by telegraph wire. So, and this is a lousy map. But if you could see the detail on this map, it would show you that the telegraph wires are by and large in the north, with maybe a wire going here, there, not much telegraph. Not much infrastructure in the South in general. Then they sit there and wonder why they lost the Civil War. Or I wonder why it took the Union 4 years to beat the South, considering they had fewer people, less infrastructure, less industry, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe the South wanted it. Okay. So, another thing that this is going to lead to, if you can get information around the country rapidly, it's going to lead to the mass spreading of news. You start to see newspapers mass-produced for an ever-growing educated population. Public schools are taking off at this time. People are more literate. They need to have something to read. The newspapers are going to provide that service. And what news are you going to read about? You're going to read about news all around the country. Groups like the Associated Press, you see these guys all the time. UPI, Associated Press, Reuters, Bloomberg. But do you know what they do? They bring in news from all around the country and they sell it to newspapers around the country. So you subscribe, as a newspaper, you subscribe to these news services. You pick and choose what news you want to put into your newspaper, and you print it, and people read the news. It's still the same today. AP, UPI, Reuters, that's what they do. They collect news from around the country, and newspapers and news organizations subscribe to them. When I was in college, I was the radio news guy. And when I would go in to prepare my news report on the hour, I would get the feed off the news wire. And it would like a ticker thing, tick 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 tick, and it would print off, and it would say, such and such happened in Atlanta, such and such happened in San Francisco, such and such happened in Denver, and it would say AP, UPI, Reuters, whatever the company was. And I would pick and choose, let's see, we'll talk about that story, I'll talk about that story, and I'll talk about that story. And that's what I presented as the news. I picked and chose what to talk about. So information is going to spread around the country faster. Information about politics, information about battles, information about trade. And if I'm involved in trade, I want to know what's going on around the country so I can make more money. All right. What else do we need to know from chapter 10? Besides immigration and social movement, besides transportation, canals, railroads, the telegraph, the press, newspapers, what else do we need to know? Yeah, Glazer. You do have the formation of a strong economic link between the Northeast and the Northwest. The Northeast is the manufacturing, the Midwest or the Northwest is a lot of the farming and foodstuffs to feed the people back east. Absolutely. What else do we need to know? Yeah.
Commonwealth versus Hunt.
Yeah, you do, but, I mean, how do you get to Commonwealth versus Hunt? I mean, good Lord, there's a whole bunch of stuff you missed. Commonwealth versus Hunt legalizes unions. Well, why are we even talking about unions and whether they're legal or not? Yeah. Who started the strike? Women, absolutely. Lowell girls working in factories. Well, why are they striking? Poor factory conditions, lousy pay, long hours, unsafe conditions, etc., etc., etc. Well, why are factories like that? Because what?
Cheap labor.
Because they're interested in cheap labor so that they can mass produce items for a growing population that is ready to consume them. What you see here is the formation of corporate America. And what do I mean by corporate America? Yeah. Absolutely. You are seeing at this time the spread of big business. Now let's assume that Pat and I go into business together and we make widgets. And I've invented a widget, and you're going to come in with me, and you and I are going to partner, and we're going to make widgets. We pool our resources. We're the widget makers. We're partners. Todd and Pat making widgets in our little factory here, our little workshop. We need to hire people to help us out, though, because there's a demand for widgets out there. So in order to hire people and in order to expand our opportunity to make widgets, what do we need? Well, we need cheap labor, but we also have to... Oh my God, guys, you need money. You need money. You need money to buy the supplies. You need money to pay the labor. You need money to expand the factory, to build something. So where am I going to get the money from? If it's just you and I mean, we've only got so much money. We can get it from bank loans, but banking in America in the 1830s, that's kind of, hit and miss. Where else can we get money from? Investors. Maybe Jonathan wants to invest in our company. And so Jonathan's going to give us money to expand our business. We can hire more workers. Absolutely. Now, let's assume that widget is defective. And it kills poor Bessie over here. It's a fictional device. It doesn't exist. Let's assume that the widget that Pat and I are making, that Jonathan's now an investor in the widget company, that there's a defect to it and it kills poor Bessie. Bessie's family wants recompense for the loss. So what is Bessie's family going to do? They're going to sue. Absolutely, to get damages. So who's Bessie's family going to sue? Me, as the CEO, him as my partner. Is Bessie's family going to sue Jonathan? Why? Who says? Who says that he's not technically part of the... He gave us the money. He's part of the... But who says that he's not part of this? Who could say that he's not part of it? That's what I'm hearing. I'm standing right next to people and I'm hearing...
The government?
Ah! The government! That's always the answer. The government! What you start to see is the formation of corporate business models. You need capital. Capital is money. We need investors. But the investors have to believe that they are not going to be sued as soon as the product goes south. So what the federal government does is it signs something into law called limited liability. Meaning, if you want to invest in a company, how many of you own stock in here? How many of you, your parents or your grandparents, bought you a share of stock as a gift because they couldn't think of what else to get you? What do you own a share of stock in, Day? You need to know your portfolio. You need to know your stock investments. Yeah. You own it part of ExxonMobil. You own a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of ExxonMobil. So as soon as ExxonMobil has an oil spill, I guess we're going to sue you because you own a fraction of that company, right? Well, we can't sue you. We can't sue you because you are an investor protected under the limited liability law that was signed, by all people, by Andrew Jackson. And it says investors cannot be held liable for the companies that they invest in. It provides protection, and it encourages investment, which is going to lead to a boom in corporate expansion. Yes?
Something bad happens if you
Huh?
If something bad happens if you
Who's they?
like the investors.
Well, if the company goes south, yeah, but a smart investor is going to notice if there's a problem and they're going to pull their money out. If they're going to sell their share of stock if the company is having a problem, and that's why the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down, the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down. When you're buying a share of stock, that's what you're doing. You're giving money to a business to expand and hire and innovate and research and develop and all that stuff. That's what stock money does. And you only get that corporate expansion, these large corporations, if you've got the money to do it. And if you protect the investor, people are going to be more willing to give money. So you're going to see that corporate expansion. So what is it that we're going to be manufacturing? Besides textiles, what else would we be manufacturing in America on a massive scale, since we now have interchangeable parts? Guns, boats, anything, shoes, shirts, hats, furniture, anything and everything. Because the standard of living in the United States is increasing. More people have more money to buy more things. And since they're being mass produced by an ever-growing corporate America, the price on those items is going to come down and make everything within reach for people. Does that make sense? All right. So you're going to see. Right, pen, right, yes. Again, there was a time when I could do this with a piece of chalk and a chalkboard. That was it.
Take the marker off.
Yeah, I could. So you start to see the expansion of factories and manufacturing, interchangeable parts. New England is going to be the center of manufacturing. A lot of it is going to be based on textiles, but you can mass produce anything. The idea of interchangeable parts means that you can mass produce whatever item you want, so long as there is a standard for the parts. And you don't need to be a genius either. You can hire unskilled labor to manufacture these things, because really, if you're just putting part A into part B and sending it down the line, what else do you need to know? You don't need to know how part A is made. There's an expert for that. You don't need to know why part A fits into part B. There's some scientific guy whose job it is to make sure that that happens. The unskilled labor, whether it's women, whether it's immigrants, whether it's children, all they need to do is be able to take part A and put it in part B and send it down the line. So you've got, developing in America, you've got this manufacturing, this industrial Northeast, this labor force of women, then immigrants. When the women get too unruly, the little girls start protesting. Capital is available through investment. Transportation systems are available to ship these goods all around the country. And you have the expansion of this market revolution. You've got all advances in technology. The cotton gin we've talked about. And the reliance on cotton, interchangeable parts, leads to mass production, mass consumption, and a need for unskilled labor. Women, children, immigrants. Women working in the factories, an opportunity for women. Okay, we need to know about that. Okay, that the women are working in the factories, they're called the Lowell girls. And you can see, I think, why they start to organize and protest. Look at the conditions they work under. 6 days a week. On the seventh day, they have to go to church for 4 hours. $12 to $14 a month, and they have to pay $5 a month for rent. And whatever money's left over, they got to ship back home so that Johnny or Billy can go to school. They stayed on an average of 3 years. What was a way a Lowell girl, do you think? What was a way a Lowell girl could get out of the factory? Yeah. Yeah, she could get hurt, which would, Yeah, that's true. And you didn't get workers' compensation. Yeah. You get married. That's how you escaped. You got married and let some guy take care of you. Oh, yeah. So you see the decline of the Lowell system, increased immigrants, women unionizing, protests of women. It's easier to bring in the Irish. Now, Pat, you mentioned about Commonwealth v. Hunt. Absolutely. You need to know about Commonwealth v. Hunt. There you are. The case is heard in 41. It's ruled on in 42, so don't get confused by that. Basically, Commonwealth v. Hunt says that labor unions are legal. Now, it says it in Massachusetts. That's what Commonwealth is, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This is not a Supreme Court ruling. It's not a national ruling. It's a state ruling in Massachusetts. But like a lot of other laws in this country, it starts off in one state, and then it spreads to another, and it spreads to another, and it spreads to another. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where labor unions are generally accepted as a part of the business process. When do you get that general acceptance? About here. So from 1841 all the way to about 1900, it takes unions that long to generally gain acceptance, so that people did not think that unions were a revolutionary organization. A lot of people thought that unions were revolutionary, that they were seeking to undermine capitalism, that they were seeking to have the workers take over the means of production. Think about it. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848. Charles Dickens, well-known socialist author, was turning his attention to the problems of the poor in Dickensian London in the 1840s. So there is a concern among a group of people in the 1840s that the factory system is dehumanizing the labor force. That these people are just interchangeable cogs. And that something should be done about it. That people should be able to work an 8-hour workday. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for family, 8 hours for sleep. That was the general union motto throughout the 19th century. And that they should get a living wage, a wage that they could live off of. All right. Let's see. We've done Irish immigrants, nativist reaction. We've done steamboats, canals, railroads, telegraph, mass newspapers, limited liability and corporate structure, manufacturing interchangeable parts, mass production, unskilled labor, the Lowell system, female labor, emphasis on textiles, unions, Commonwealth versus Hunt, which is always a test question. What else do we need to know? Yeah. Okay, opportunities for women. Okay? Yes, you are correct. Now, this comes along with, I'm going to go back to this. This comes along with the formation of a class structure in America. Corporations are making a lot of money. The rich are getting richer. Poor people are working, the rich, they're accumulating their wealth. They live in rich neighborhoods. The poor, okay, your paupers, your widows, your orphans, your unemployable, they're, on the outer rungs of society. You've got your working class people, your immigrants, your women, your children who work on the assembly lines, your unskilled labor. They work for, pennies. But you also have, and of course you also have African American poverty. Free blacks find it very difficult to find jobs in factories. Factories won't hire them. A lot of blacks who are former slaves, escaped slaves, they live in black communities throughout the Northeast and the Midwest, where there's mutual aid societies, and the church plays a role in helping the community get by. But you have the emergence of a middle class in America at this time. This middle class are more educated, they are experts, they are, if you've got a corporate structure, if you've got a corporate structure, okay, you've got the wealthy people who own the company. You've got the poor people or the working class people who work on the assembly lines. But you've got the scientists, the lawyers, the accountants, the bankers, the people who are more educated and know more things about the people who work in research and development, the scientists. And so you're going to have this middle class America come about in the early 1800s, the 1830s, the 1840s, 1850s. There's going to be a lifestyle of comfort for these folks. The father is generally regarded as the breadwinner, the mother, the caretaker, the educator, the cook. Children have more opportunities. Kids don't have to go to work. Kids don't have to worry about where their meal is coming from. They go to school. They get an education. Education provides opportunities for those kids, and those kids become middle class or upper class people. And that's the American dream that you're starting to see. As people's incomes increase, the birth rate is going to fall. People want to emphasize more of their time and resources on fewer children. Plus the fact that public health is increasing, allowing people to live longer. So your kids are not dying of weird diseases. So you don't have to have 14 kids and hope to God half of them survive. You can have 2 or 3 kids and know that if they're growing up in a middle class household, that they're generally going to have good health, good nutrition, good education, better standard of living. You'll also notice that in the pre-Civil War era, a higher rate of abortion. That's never on the AP test, but I do bring that up because that starts to become an issue. Now, as the middle class emerges, women are expected to play a role. Now, we talked about Republican motherhood back during the formation of the Republic, that women were expected to raise good and virtuous sons for the Republic. That idea is going to continue towards the Civil War in this idea of the cult of domesticity, that the women's sphere was the home, the middle class home. Take care of the home, clean the home, cook the meals, raise the children, make sure they get educated, make sure they've got all the things that they need. The woman's job was to run the house. The man's job was to go out and get a job and make money for the family and provide. We've talked about female education. We talked about opportunities for women to go to school, and you are going to see increasing numbers of female-only schools forming throughout the country. Mount Holyoke Female Seminary is one of the first ones. Oberlin, Vassar, a number of others that are called the Seven Sisters. Those are female schools. and that the role for women was to maintain the female sphere as wives, mothers, housekeepers, make sure that the house is kept up. All right, the final area, with working class women. If women weren't lucky enough to have a husband who could provide for them, and they wanted jobs, well, they could get jobs if they were educated as teachers, as secretaries, as seamstresses, as housemaids. Those were the jobs that were generally considered for women. Now, there's one other area that we need to know about this market revolution. How are you going to feed all these people? And that comes from commercial agriculture. How are you going to mass produce food for the growing populations of the cities of the East? You're going to do it through the invention of the steel plow. Why is the steel plow so different than other plows? What were other plows made of? You know? Wood. Wood. Absolutely. Take a look at an old plow, man. It's just made of wood. How far down in the dirt can you cut with that? Not very far. But if you can have a steel plow, you can cut deeper into the dirt. When you dig down in the dirt, no matter how dry it is, what do you find? What?
Water.
Water. Now, where in America might this be useful? To cut through dry soil to get at the water underneath.
The Great Plains.
The Great Plains, which is going to become the breadbasket, not just of the United States, but of the world. You had to find a way to make the Great Plains growable. And this is it. The steel plow invented by John Deere in the 1830s. And if you're going to have these massive farms, you can't go out and pick the wheat and the barley and corn by hand. You've got to have machines that can do that. So the other major invention is Cyrus McCormick's mechanical reaper.
Good morning, Southern. Your morning announcements will be on shortly.
Great. Cyrus McCormick's mechanical reaper. So the steel plow and the mechanical reaper are going to make agriculture and farming that much more efficient. Guys, you're seeing mass production. Mass production is kind of the watchword of the 1830s, 40s, and 50s. Mass production of textiles. Mass production of consumer goods. Mass production of railroads. Mass production of foodstuffs. Mass production of cotton. Mass production of all manner of economic items. It's going to lead to a rising standard of living. This is a market revolution in America, a major, significant change, transformation. Now, keep in mind that the folks living out in the rural areas are going to have a different life than the people living in the cities. They rely on a lot of religion and community.
Morning, Southern. Today is Thursday, December 12th, a V-Day. Please stand for your pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with
one
liberty and
nation,
justice for all.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Model UN meeting this Thursday and Friday
All right.
for all those attending the South River Conference this Saturday in Mr. Yeoman's room during Bulldog Block. This is the last week to buy candy grams and send a sweet treat to a friend or favorite teacher. Stop by the lunch table. The tables are all lunch
Okay.
cost only $1.
Folks.
There is a mandatory mock trial meeting after school Friday, December 13th in room C201.
Applications for World Catholic Social Studies Honor Society are still being accepted until Friday at 2:30. Qualified juniors and seniors should see Mr. Smith. Attention juniors and seniors. A representative from Anne Arundel County, Anne Arundel Community College is coming to Southern on Tuesday, December 17th at 9:45 a.m. to discuss the Jumpstart program and pre-registration options. There will be a sign-up sheet in the guidance office. Please donate money to help the survivors of the typhoon in the Philippines. Over 9 million people have been affected. Donate spare change at lunch. Attention all students who have auditioned or will audition for the spring musical 9 to 5. Callback announcements will be posted on the drama company's Blackboard page this weekend. Callbacks will be on Tuesday right after school. If you receive a callback, please see Mrs. Gresko or Mr. Hall on Monday to receive
Guys, I'm going to
instructions
collect
for
the
your
chapter
callback.
10
Please see Mrs.
top
Barnes
10
today
that
and
you
tomorrow
did.
if you need to know how to access Blackboard. Mr. Barrows National Art Honor Society wants to remind everyone this is the last day to finish your handmade sketchbook to ship out
Okay,
this
can I
Friday
just-
to the Los Angeles Domestic Violence Shelter.
Chapter 10, top 10. Hand it in.
Until 3 p.m. today. You can also bring your Secret Santa gifts to Mr. Bowles at any time between now and next Thursday. See you after school today to finish. Teachers, please excuse students from your classes today that have a pink pad
Yeah.
for the blood drive. Classes have been